Morning, guys. You're all very welcome to the webinar. Adrian Kelly's my name. I'm the Sales and Marketing Director of DNA IT Solutions. Um, we are a managed services provider based in Blanchetown in North Dublin. You're very welcome this morning. We've put together this educational session to discuss Microsoft Copilot and the Microsoft Business Premium Suite and how it's helping companies to achieve NIS2 security compliance. Um, so joining me today for that session is John Tolan from Micro Warehouse. John is one of Micro Warehouse's AI consultants and Microsoft specialist. John is going to give a fantastic presentation this morning about the Copilot suite and what it can provide in terms of productivity and how it can assist us all in our work at a very practical level and do a little bit of myth busting, it's fair to say, and really show some of the demonstrable value within the platform, which is very, very powerful. Um, so after that, then we'll have Jason Coetzee, who's our DNA pre-sales technical consultant, and Jason is going to walk through at a simple level, really, how the business case for migrating onto Microsoft Business Premium is being really boosted by the need to meet the NIS2 security compliance regulations. There's a lot of fantastic features within the Business Premium stack that really help enable NIS2 compliance, and it's a fantastic business case for doing that. So Jason's going to walk through and just explain where this is coming from, as more and more organizations are trying to achieve I guess what we like to term, and it's not just jargon, it's very much a true strategy, this zero trust approach to cybersecurity. So for a lot of organizations, this makes an awful lot of sense just to engage with what Business Premium can deliver here. It can really shorten the journey to NIS2 compliance. And this is something that DNA is working on at the moment quite closely with several clients. So we're seeing ourselves firsthand the benefit a lot of people are getting from that. Um, so, like I said, DNA, for those who don't know us, we're a managed services provider. We are very much specialist in cybersecurity and cloud-centric solutions. We're the most recent winner of the Managed Security Services Partner of the Year award at last year's Tech Excellence Award. And it's something that we're quite proactive on, quite strong on cybersecurity. So this is very close to our hearts. The co-pilot piece and all the artificial intelligence surge that we see going on in the market, we see that as being an extremely important component of the new tech stack that every business has to become comfortable with. Everybody has to get aware of. So everyone has to understand. So again, it does pose some security issues and a few other things everyone needs to consider, and John's going to cover that this morning. So I'll pass you over to John, guys. I hope you're going to enjoy it. I'm sure you will. I've seen this presentation before. This is a fantastic demonstration on Copilot and what it can do for you. So I'm going to pass you over to John now, and I hope you enjoy. Please do send us in any questions you have in the chat. Please, anything comes into your head at all, it's very important. We want to make this session interactive and not turn it into something where you're sitting there listening. We will take questions at the end and we'll have a discussion at the end. Okay, so over to you, John, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thanks everybody for joining in the workshop around AI and Copilot. We're going to go through over the course of about 80 to 90 minutes different pieces of information around Copilot AI and how it can enable your working environment. Over the course of this session, I'm going to just go through a little bit of an introduction to AI and just how much it's actually being adopted. Okay. I'll touch on the age of co-pilots and how great Microsoft are at naming things, but maybe not really. However, we'll look at co-pilots, and the specific one we'll be looking at today will be Copilot for 365. We'll also talk about Copilot Chat, right? This is the free version of Copilot and something that you can use and roll out to everybody within the working environment in order for them to dip their toes around AI. I'll go through how you can achieve success with AI and avoid failure. Some of the little things that you can think about as an organization, as different departments within the organization, as even just as individuals, and how you can get the most from a successful rollout of AI across your organization. I'll take you through a real world example where we in Micro Warehouse actually used Copilot to create an event And in doing so, we were able to save not just hours creating this event, but actually days of time was saved. And then I look at and touch briefly on security in Copilot and how this works in general. And of course, if you have any questions or concerns around security and AI in Copilot, then I would just ask that you send those questions in and we will address them at the end. That's no problem at all. And then essentially we'll just get into the crux of what this is, which is a live demo of how you can use Copilot across the various different applications that are there. So we will look at using it in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, and I'll show some use cases that you can have. Now, of course, anybody watching this today, you may be in different industries, you have different people in different departments whose day-to-day jobs are different from each other, right? So what I do won't necessarily be in line with what you do in a day-to-day. All I ask is that you try to align it yourself, try and correlate what I do with maybe some of your own tasks. I will touch on agents and how agents can be utilized when you have a Copilot for 365 license. And this is one of the more even exciting parts of AI and Copilot from Microsoft, being able to create agents and bots to do specific tasks. And then I'll give you some advice in just how you can go about rolling out Copilot for your organization. So we see here AI technology is here. And what length of time do you think it actually took these technologies to reach 100 million users? Right? If we look at mobile phones, okay, probably not a child above the age of 12 that doesn't have a mobile phone these days, right? And then if you look at the internet, of course, every company in the Western Hemisphere will have the internet. And I think Facebook at the moment, they're probably over 1 billion users. But how long did it take them to reach 100 million users? Surprisingly, it took mobile phones about 16 years. The internet, that took 7 years. And then, of course, Facebook took 4.5 years to reach that milestone, which is quite surprising. What's even more surprising is that ChatGPT and AI did it in 3 months, right? That is how quickly this technology is being adopted. And this is all just to say that while looking at AI now seems like you're getting in on the ground floor, you're starting from the beginning, it's actually been out there for quite some time, right? Even I was doing a course in AI and UCD recently, and I was utilizing Copilot within my course, right? I actually opened up a Word document, and what I would do is I would dictate. Well, I wouldn't dictate, but the entire lesson that was taking place for 3 hours, where you have a lecturer and 20 people in a room talking, it was being dictated into a Word document, right? So I would have like this 37,000 Word document, something like 30 odd pages, right? So kind of a bit useless in and of itself. However, I was able to utilize Copilot and AI to get any information I wanted from that document. So I could ask Copilot, in this lesson, what were the main topics that were discussed? What real world examples were used during this lesson? What are the main takeaways from this lesson? What did people agree on or disagree on? And now I have something that's actually really useful. And this is all by the way of saying that essentially everybody leaving college now, they will be leaving having used this AI technology in order to get their diplomas, get their degrees, their masters. So when they enter the workforce, the entire next generation of people entering the workforce, they're going to expect these tools. Okay. To not give somebody AI when they're coming into your environment over the next year or so would be the equivalent of giving somebody a fax machine and then asking them to compete with people who have emails. Okay. It's not going to work. So it is really, really great that you are here now and looking at AI and introducing AI because as much as this survey and this one statistic from this survey suggests, 87% of organizations believe AI will give them a competitive advantage. While that's true, and I don't understand the 13% that don't think that, right? They'll be lost in the weeds, right? They're still walking around with Walkmans or something. However, I think this stat is actually quite dated because in about 6 months to a year, I don't think it will give you a competitive advantage. I think not having AI will actually just simply put you at a disadvantage to everybody else, just looking at how quickly it's being adopted. So again, really great that you're taking the time to actually look into this and see how you can utilize AI in order to help your environment. Now we say the age of Copilot. This kind of just takes me back to when I mentioned Microsoft being incredibly bad at maybe naming things. They're not like the best at naming their products. They went about basically creating AI, and they've got numerous AI solutions, and they decided to call them all variations of Copilot, right? Which is confusing to say the least, right? They have Copilot for Studio, Copilot for Sales, Copilot for Finance, Copilot for Security, right? All different iterations. What we're going to be looking at specifically is Copilot for 365, right? And where this differentiates itself to the other Copilots specifically is that it works within your 365 environment. Right. This is also where Copilot differentiates itself from Gemini or ChatGPT, right? Which I've had some people say, well, ChatGPT is better. And I'd say, well, that's great, enjoy. However, never use your company data with ChatGPT. In fact, never use your company data, your customer data, or any sensitive data at all with anything that lives outside your 365 environment, right? Because your 365 environment is a secure, encrypted environment. It's where you house all your data, and it needs to be secure. If you take that data and bring it outside of your 365 environment and upload it to ChatGPT in order to try and do something, you are asking for trouble. Where Copilot for 365 differentiates itself and stands above any of those other solutions is that it lives within your 365 environment. Okay, so it not only can utilize your SharePoint and your OneDrive and your files, your emails, your Teams meetings, your chats that you have in Teams, it also lives within your Office applications. So you would see a Copilot feature within Excel, Teams, Outlook, PowerPoint, and Word. And you can use that for various different tasks. So that's what we're going to be specifically talking about. And hopefully during the demonstration, I'll be able to show you some of the features that you can do within Teams and those other applications. Just touching on Copilot Chat, I just generated this image. Again, all the imagery that I tend to use tends to be generated using Copilot because it's really good fun, and it can be quite nice. You can get very unique with it, right? This image is basically a depiction of Copilot Chat, right? It's when you need your little baby armbands. You're going to tip your toe into the pond of AI. You got these little baby armbands. That is what Copilot Chat is, right? If you open up your Edge browser now, you will see the Copilot option on the top right hand side. And that will allow you to use it for free. And anybody in your organization can do that. And we would suggest that you absolutely encourage your employees to use Copilot Chat in the safest, the most responsible way possible. And that way they can get used to what prompting is. They can get used to asking AI certain questions, and more importantly, how to ask those questions in order to get the best thing back to themselves. And then when you're ready to graduate to Copilot 365, they're in a better place to do so, right? So you see here, this is what Copilot Chat is, right? You've got foundational capabilities. It's grounded in the web, so you can ask it questions, you can research topics, you can do various different things. And it has got some commercial data protection available to it as well, also extremely important. Now, when you're ready to graduate to Copilot 365, as I mentioned, which is the paid for solution, you've got enterprise grade data protection. It lives within your 365 environment. No data ever leaks, not only out of your 365 environment, but even across users or groups within that 365 environment. And we'll touch on that within the security section. And hopefully, if you have any questions, we can also address those for you. Okay, it's grounded in your 365 and the 365 applications itself. And this is something that you may not have known, but I touched on the different Copilots a little earlier, and the first one of those I listed was Copilot Studio. This is a specific license that you can use in order to create agents and bots with unbelievable levels of complexity. And you can integrate it with third-party applications like GitHub or Salesforce and so on. If you have a Copilot for 365 license, it will actually give you a Copilot for Studio watered down version license where you can create agents and bots that can link into and look at your documents, your SharePoint files, websites, right? You can't get too complex where you need to actually integrate it with third-party applications. And if you ever need that level of complexity, you can just purchase Copilot Studio. But just having the Copilot for 365 license gives you a watered down version of Copilot Studio, which is brilliant. And we'll look at that when we touch on the agents section. I just wanted to go through a few things because I know that a lot of people's concerns around Copilot are the expense, right? So the first thing is enabling Copilot chat across your 365 environment, right? Essentially just giving all of your users permissions to use Copilot chat as a free AI tool that sits within the Edge browser, right? Again, I use the word free. This is no cost to it whatsoever, and it will help your team get used to how AI works. However, when you do introduce that Copilot for 365 that has a cost, people's concerns are, well, it can be quite costly per user, per year. Is it justified? And I would argue that unbelievably yes. For me, it goes without saying, right? For instance, time saved. You see here that if you were to save simply 2 hours a week with the help of Copilot for 365, that would equate to 100 hours a year. And at €25 an hour, that's €2,500 worth of time saved. That's the license paying for itself about 6 or 7 times over, right? That's that's spectacularly lowballing. Just how much time you can save using Copilot. When you think about it, I will get asked questions from partners all the time, right? A light day for me would be about 70 or 100 emails. That would be a light normal day for me. And I will know the answers to most of those Microsoft related questions because, people tend to ask the same questions. However, there's a lot of times when I don't know the answers, right? Especially if they're complex around security, etc. And if I don't know the answers, what I would normally have to do, unfortunately for me, is I'd have to wade through the weeds, right? The black hole that Microsoft calls a website and try and find the answer. And that's not an easy task, right? If anybody's ever gone to Microsoft's websites, you can get lost and not find yourself for days, right? Being serious, I would literally spend 10, 15, 20 minutes, sometimes longer, trying to find the answer to a specific question. Now, if I get 70 or 80 or 100 questions in a day and I don't know the answer to 5 of them, spending 15 to 20 minutes trying to find the answer out is a spectacular amount of time wasted every day. With Copilot, I have the answer within 5 seconds when I don't know it. So even that is me saving about 2 hours a day, not a week, a day. If I was asked now by DNAIT to create a presentation around security in 365 environments and why it's so important, which, by the way, it is, and I'm sure Jason will touch on that, I could create that presentation for them, no problem. But it would probably take me about 2 hours. I could do that in about 5 minutes now using Copilot for 365. So hopefully I'll demonstrate that for you a little later. But that's all in the way of saying that 2 hours a week is spectacularly lowballing. And even if it was only 2 hours a week, and even if you were only earning €25 an hour as an employee, that still equates to what 7 times the license is. So really, the fee is easily justified. Right? The last part is basically the same thing. If you were to increase your productivity on a 50 grand salary, again, you're paying for the license 6, 7 times over. Now, I have a license, and if my boss decided to move it from me, one of two things would happen. I'd either quit and I'd go work with somebody who actually gives me the tools I need, or I just pay for it myself, right? That's how valuable it is to me. I would just say, look, just take the whatever it is, 350 quid or whatever it is out of my salary. Because right now, it would be way worse for me to not have that and try and do my kind of day-to-day functions. So that's just all the way of saying that it is extremely good value for money when you look down into it. So we have two guys here, right? One of them is basically enjoying the success of rolling out AI within his environment, and the other one is me after I get AI removed because it didn't work, right? How do you avoid failure? How do you achieve success? Well, it's very, very, very simple, right? You start small. That is really the best advice that I can give. When you introduce AI into your environment, first of all, you tend to do it as an organization, right? You think of yourself as this big block, this big one organization, when in fact you are multiple cogs within a machine, all doing different things, right? You've got different departments: HR, marketing, customer service, admin, finance, sales. And you've got different individuals within those departments who all have slightly different roles and also maybe just work a little bit differently from each other. So when you're introducing AI into an environment, you're introducing it to multiple different people in different roles doing different things. And the worst thing you can do is try and just start off trying to achieve really complex, big, groundbreaking things because you will simply fail. And then when you fail, you'll lose confidence in the solution. And then when you lose confidence in the solution, you'll just retreat back to your old habits. You'll put the solution in the bin and then it's gone. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, within a year, you're falling behind the rest of the other organizations within your industry. If you start small as an organization, as a department, and as an individual, look for the day to day tasks in order to achieve early wins, right? Easy wins, things that can help you just save a little bit of time, right? Help you become that slightly bit more productive and help with the quality of your output by just a little bit. And then you grow in confidence with the solution. You learn how to use it better over time, and then you grow in complexity to what you try and get it to do for you. And then after a year, you're the one leading the industry. In order to help you prepare for that kind of era of AI, we would ask you to maybe just ask yourself these very simple 5 questions. And not just ask yourself as in a blase afterthought. Sit down as a leadership team. Sit down as with the head managers of each department and talk about this stuff and write it down. What are your organization's goals for using AI? And then break that down much, much further. What are your department's goals for using AI? What would your individual goals be for using AI? If you can create a list on that, that would help you achieve more success instead of just thinking, well, it should be able to do everything, because obviously it can't. And then more importantly, what are your pain points that AI can actually address? Do you spend too much time sending emails, or it takes too long, or you have too many emails to send and respond to? Are you in too many Teams meetings that you can't get anything productive done, or you can't get anything tangible done because you're constantly in meetings about doing things as opposed to actually doing things? And can AI help with that? Or maybe you're in marketing or sales and creating presentations or sales proposals, or trying to catch up on the 6 months worth of emails you've had with a potential client before you've got that first meeting, and you're trying to get your notes all put together and it's causing massive pain and headaches and you're not ready for it, right? Creating content as a marketing person, or creating social media blogs, or reports, or anything in the form of Word, or even just getting through Excel data files, large data sets, can be tedious and difficult. If you can nail down what your pain points are as an organization, as a department, and then of course, as I mentioned before, as an individual, it will go a long way towards with learning how AI can address it and then being able to implement it. And of course, what are your organization's current capabilities? Because for all you know, you may have great capabilities with AI. If you sit your employees down and ask them who here uses AI, even just in their own day-to-day personal lives, who's used ChatGPT, who's used Gemini, who's used Copilot Chat, who uses AI Ninja, which is good for creating images sometimes, right? Who uses the Adobe um, AI tool, maybe some of their artwork that they do at a personal level, right? You don't know what your current capabilities are around AI unless you have that conversation with your employees. And when you have an understanding of who's really good at it and who's not, you will know where training is required and how to maybe close up gaps that you might have around AI. And of course, this webinar goes a long way towards doing that. But then you have your IT provider, DNA IT, that you can contact if you need further training, or if you want to have further training for your own employees specifically. That's something that can be arranged. Does your organization have a data strategy in place? This is by the way of saying Copilot is a brilliant tool. AI is a brilliant tool. But really, it's only as good as your data, right? If your data is, I'll say this politically correctly, which I don't like doing, but I will. If your data is bad, right? If your data is poor, then Copilot and AI is not going to be as useful for you as it could be, right? But if your data is clean, if it's structured, right? If you've got a library of images, if you've got a library of documents that you use frequently, if you've got a library of templates, various different things that are structured well and organized well, and they have security policies on them where they should, then Copilot can really flourish. AI in general can really flourish, right? So it's only as good as your data is. So what kind of a data strategy have you got in place? Now, we will touch on this in regards to the security section very, very shortly, but the data strategy also applies to what security policies have you got in place? How are groups locked down? Can only HR people see things within HR? And can only finance people see things within finance? Okay, so that's something that's interesting. You need to make sure that that's the case, right? Do you have sensitivity labels implemented so that certain confidential documents can only be seen by certain people? And the reason I mentioned that is because with Copilot, a single one line that I will use all the time to essentially explain security is that when a user has a Copilot license, it will never show that user any information. It will never show them anything within the 365 environment itself that they don't already have access to. But the one caveat to that is that it may show them information they didn't know they had access to, right? So that's just something to be aware of, right? This is actually a good thing because if you discover somebody has information that they shouldn't have access to, you can close those gaps, right? And you can get a security review done by the NAIT. They can help you with that process. Now, the last part here, take a deep breath, right? A bit of a word salad. Does your organization have the necessary infrastructure and resources to support AI initiatives, right? All that means is when you're ready to implement AI, do you have a structure in place where you can learn where is this working? Where is it saving us time? Where is it providing us with better quality output? Where is it providing us with better productivity? And then most importantly, where is it not? And that's really important because then if you have a structure in place where you can get these learnings when you first launch AI, you can then learn from that. You can use that information so you can make an educated, informed decision on how you're going to roll out Copilot and AI across the rest of the organization after the initial launch. And more importantly, where you're not going to roll it out so that you can make sure you get the biggest return on your investment. So let me just take you through a very, very quick real world example of where we use Copilot in our own company. Okay. We were running an event. We wanted to create an event for our partners where we would teach them, educate them on how best to prompt using Copilot. Now, you may ask, what is a prompt? So with Copilot, it's simply you just asking it a question. It's just referred to as a prompt. And there are good ways to ask questions to an AI solution, and there are very, very bad ways to ask questions to an AI solution. Okay. So we wanted to educate our partners on what good looking prompts would be. So what we did was we talked to our marketing guys, but unfortunately our guys in marketing were extremely busy with a yearly annual event that we have every October, right? So this is back in September. So we said, right, we cannot lean on our marketing team. We need to try and do this ourselves. So we got together one morning and we said, why don't we just try and use Copilot in order to build the event itself? And this is where Copilot is great because it gives you ideas, right? It makes sure that you never have to start with a blank page ever again, that you have something to work with. So the first thing we did was just basically ask, can you suggest a number of names for this event, right? We're planning to educate partners on how to build useful prompts with AI tools. Copilot comes back, gives us a list of 10 names, right? And we thought, okay, that's nice, right? Prompt mastery workshop, right? That's a little bit derivative, right? And then you see like effective AI prompting seminar, right? So again, that's something that I don't think you would want to go to, right? I generally don't want to attend anything that says seminar at the end of it. So we just asked Copilot, could you give us any more suggestions? And it did. And when it did, immediately prompt craft stood out, right? Kind of the art of crafting a good prompt. And the reason it stood out is because it sounds like Minecraft, right? And that's a Microsoft property. So we thought, you know what, actually, prompt craft is really good. We removed the rest. We didn't need the rest. And we said, let's go with prompt craft. And now we have a name. But we also had a theme, right? We had a Minecraft theme. We thought that could be really good. So then we said, Copilot, could you actually create a banner for the event, right? That we could use in email invitations, social media um, posts. And considering it's going to be called Promptcraft, can you design the image with the text Promptcraft in the same design as Minecraft? Now, we got a few images back. What I will say is when we did this, which was about, I want to say 6 to 8 months ago, Copilot did struggle to create letters and words in images because it doesn't spell them, right? It draws them as pixels and it would generally have some slight mistakes. And it's since then become way better. I've been creating unbelievably good images and the spellings within them tend to be perfect, right? But we see here we got the first image back and it was okay. It was just a little bit bland and we thought, all right, that's fine. The second image we got back, however, a bit more colorful, a bit darker though, right? But a bit more vibrant, and a little bit maybe too futuristic, even though it's about AI. However, as you can see, there was two M's in prompt, and the A. I don't know about you, but for me, it looks like a Pac-Man character, right? One of the ghosts from Pac-Man. So we thought, okay, that's a bit too dark. But the third image it gave us was actually perfect. It was bright, it was vibrant, it was colorful. Promptcraft was spelled correctly, so that was a big plus. And we thought, you know what, that's actually perfect. Let's go with that. And we use that for emailing our partners. We use it in um, creating social media posts and awareness about this event we were going to run. We also used it on our landing page. We built a landing page on our website, all in the mold and theme of Minecraft, and that was the big banner going across the top of it. That was excellent. Now, I asked our marketing guy, Glenn, listen, Glenn, if I was smart enough to come up with the name Promptcraft, right, which I wasn't, and if I was creative enough to come up with the whole theme of Minecraft, which of course I wasn't, how long would it take you to create an image? Like if I needed an image, how long would it take you to put it together from scratch? And essentially he said it would take about 2 days, right? For him to just go away, take an image and create something completely from scratch, it would easily take 1 to 2 days to do that. And it may not even look as good as what we have. And we had all of this, the name, the theme, the imagery, all within a couple of hours one morning. I've then since created this image using Copilot and just taking some images and putting them into Photoshop. And we're about to run our Prompt Crafts 3 session, right? Called Secrets of Agents, right? Because it's going to be based around creating agents and so forth using Copilot. And again, just a really good edit of the original image where I have a secret agent in there. It's got a noir feel, kind of black and white. And that's just kind of it's not just the fun you can have with Copilot, but it helps you create things that otherwise would have taken days, not just hours. After that, we actually went a bit further, right? I said, could you actually draft an agenda for me based on it'll take place at this time in this place, it'll run from this time till that time, we'll serve coffee and so forth at these times. Now, there's not a person within this webinar right now that can't create an agenda. Okay, of course, it's very easy, but it's time consuming, it's boring, it's tedious. So the fact that I could just put that prompt in and have an agenda within 2 seconds is fantastic. And again, it just iterates that you never have to start with a blank page. However, it is good to stop here and just note that when you are using AI, you never take what it gives you as something that you can just pass off as your own straight away without working on it. Right? It's there to make sure you don't have to start with a blank page. It's not there to give you the finished thing straight off the bat. Right? Anything you create with Copilot, you will see a line at the bottom that says it's AI generated and it may be incorrect. It is up to you to work on that thing to then make it your own. So, of course, this was great to have, this nice little agenda, but I didn't use it. I just shrunk it down, simplified it, and I had a nice little agenda then very, very quickly. And that's a very important thing. Making sure that when you do get something, it's to give you a starting place. You then have to work to get to the finish line. Right? Copilot is a co-pilot. It's an assistant, right? It's not a pilot. It cannot do your job for you. Right? Which is a good thing. You don't want it to do your job for you. If it could do your job for you, there would be no need for you. So that wouldn't be a good thing. Right? It's there to help you get to the finish line faster. And the better your prompts, and the better you get used to prompting, which is going to become a skill in and of itself, the less work you have to do to get to that finish line. but you still need to do some. And that was it. Prompt craft across our landing page. Really, really nice. And the event was really good, as it was. Of course, it was, because we did a prompt craft 2, and now we're doing a prompt craft 3 in a couple of months. So it worked really well. So, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just touch on security, okay? And I'm going to play a very quick video. Now, I'm going to assume you can hear this, but Adrian, if you have the ability to turn on your mic, if you can just shout at me if you're not hearing this 1 minute video, just let me know. Thank you. Oh, actually, there is no video. Perfect. I removed it because we had issues with the sound. Okay, so what the video goes through is simply that within Copilot, it lives within your 365 environment. It's protected by all of the security that you have within your 365 environment. Okay, your data is essentially your data, right? It's encrypted end to end. Microsoft don't even have access on your data, right? The only people who can see information, files, documents, or anything within your 365 environment are your own users. And they can only see the information you give them access to. Also, your data is not used to train the OpenAI Foundation. So your data is not used to train the large language model that Copilot is built on, right? Microsoft have infinite amount of publicly available data that they use for that. They do not use your data. Okay, and your data is also protected by all of the most comprehensive enterprise compliance and security controls and policies that you have in place, which is why I mentioned earlier, talk to DNAIT to make sure that your groups are locked down to the people in which they should be locked down to, that individuals only have access to files and folders that those individuals should have access to, in order to make sure that data doesn't leak across any groups or users. Now, I'm going to just touch very, very briefly on finance, right? Because it's not an area in which I generally tend to demo, right? I've worked in sales, I've done some marketing, I've done some operations and reporting for various different organizations. And when I do a demo, I'll be kind of showing it in the things that I do on a day to day, which aren't maybe finance related. So I do want to just touch specifically on finance for a moment, just to go through some things, right? One is that like 79% of people are comfortable using AI for analytical work. That's obviously going to go up and up and up the more we see Copilot and AI being used within the workplace. And of course, when you're doing things within Copilot, like completing an annual budget, right, with Copilot, or when you're doing various different tasks using Copilot, you can use it across Teams, Excel, Word, and so forth. Right? You're having meetings with your legal team, or you're having meetings with your management team around budgeting for next year. You can use Copilot to get any information from those meetings that you want. Right? You can summarize any different pieces of documentation within your environment. You can even go to Excel and get past financial information, verify revenue projections for the upcoming annual budget, right? There's loads of different things that you can do from a financial perspective using Copilot across the various different applications, including creating presentations to summarize the deal or the budget or whatever it is you're doing to your leadership team. Now, we will look to make this deck available to yourselves. And within the deck, of course, is these hyperlinked resources, which bring you to like how to use Copilot. There's loads of little short videos in there on best kind of use cases for using Copilot, adoption of Copilot, and of course, product documentation, right? So if you go in here to these sites when you have the deck, you will get a lot more resources and stuff around Copilot and how to use it. If you were doing an acquisition from a financial point of view, right, you could look at getting Copilot to help you with that. Okay, obviously not do it for you, but help you, right? You could summarize due diligence reports using Copilot within Teams. You can analyze financial data using Excel, or you can, of course, create an executive presentation using PowerPoint. As I mentioned, previous 2 hour presentations now take me 5 to 10 minutes, right? And you can refine the deal analysis and get insights from Excel that you can utilize using Copilot. right? Lots of different little things that you can do, and of course, some of this is hyperlink that you'll be able to utilize. And here is just essentially a little bit of a day in the life of a financial analyst, right? Let's just say, for argument's sake, Hillary, she's beginning her day, she's looking at Excel, and she's looking at estimates for a new product, right? She can now use Copilot to filter the data and get what she wants. Not just filter and manipulate the data, which hopefully I'll be able to show a little bit of in the demonstration, but she'll be able to get insights from that data, ask questions of that data. Even if she is capable of creating pivot tables and charts and so forth, it can still be a time consuming process to get them looking correct. Whereas if you use Copilot to just ask it to show you certain insights, it will within minutes. And that can be a very powerful tool. Of course, she meets with her manager, her IT, they discuss the reporting requirements, they discuss the updates from the sales organizations. They can ask Copilot to summarize that meeting. They can ask Copilot to give them all the key takeaways and the topics that were discussed during that meeting, right? Even I myself, I mentioned that I was doing that UCD course. It was every Wednesday morning for 12 weeks. Now, just coincidentally, I happened to have my own team meeting every Wednesday morning for 2 hours. And I missed the last 12 of those meetings. However, at a quarter past 12, what I would do is I would simply go into Teams and I would just ask Copilot. It's funny, the first thing I would always ask Copilot is just show me every time my name was mentioned, right? I want to make sure I'm not in trouble, right? But then I would say, show me every time Copilot was mentioned, right? Because that's something maybe that I'm looking after at the moment. And then I'd say, give me all the key takeaways, discussion topics, and objectives from this meeting. Show me all action items and tasks that are handed out in this meeting. And within about 10 minutes, I'm caught up on a 2 hour meeting I never even attended, right? Let alone catching up and getting information from a meeting I did actually attend. So it can be extremely helpful from that point of view. Right, 10 a.m. Hillary, she finally gets her main project for the day. She reviews the due diligence information on a potential acquisition target, and she's asking Copilot to create a summary. She can do that within the Copilot chat or within Copilot within the web browser, not in the web browser, but the web function of Copilot within your 365 environment that I will show you in the demo. And then, of course, other Excel use cases here. We don't need to go into them all, but you can see that throughout the course of the day, it's very, very easy to see how somebody or an individual can utilize Copilot to help with aspects of their day. Right, what I'll do is I'm going to jump into a quick real world demo and try and show how Copilot can be used. So the first thing is your 365 environment. Right, here we are within our office.com. You go to office.com, it will take you here. And this is where you look up your OneDrive, some web applications, and so on. Well, if you've got a Copilot license, you will see it. And I'll just get rid of this. You will see it here on the left. And when you're in here, you will see you've got this work web toggle, right? So let's just look at the web function. When you're in here, you can simply, it's almost infinite, the things that you can do. You can ask Copilot anything you want about any topic and get it back in any kind of format, right? Similar to ChatGPT, right? So this would be like the Copilot ChatGPT, if you will. You can literally ask Copilot anything, right? I mentioned earlier, and I've got a document with loads of prompts that I would use on a daily basis, right? But I got a question from a partner, right? One of hundreds I get. And this was one where I didn't know the answer straight away off the top of my head. So after, and this is important, after searching Microsoft's websites for about 10 minutes, it occurred to me, oh, John, you've got a Copilot license. You should probably use it, right? And that's the thing. We've all spent the last 10, 20, 30 years, 40 years not using AI. So it is something you have to try and remind yourself to use and utilize, right? So I put the question in, right? Is data loss prevention a feature of a Microsoft E3 subscription, right? Very, very useful feature. I didn't know the answer, and within seconds, I do. Yes, data loss prevention is a feature that's included in the Microsoft 365 E3 subscription. Right, that's really, really good. I can just copy that, send it off, job done. Save myself 10, 15, 20 minutes. Now, you see here, the resources from which this information is derived is listed, right? And of course, it does tell you it's AI generated, so it may not be correct. So I put the question in, I get an answer back. I can see Microsoft website, that's reliable. Microsoft website, that's reliable. Non-Microsoft website, right? Now, I don't know what this is, but let's pretend it said Wikipedia, right? Now, anybody can edit Wikipedia. It's obviously not a reliable source. So if I saw Wikipedia there, I'd be like, I don't know if I can send this answer out to one of my partners because I'm not 100% on it. Well, this is where your prompting can improve. You ask the question, but you just ask for a source, right? You give it a source, sorry. In this case, I say only source the answer. Oh, give me 1 second. It's just refreshing here for me. And we'll just do that very quickly. So I just say only source the answer from Microsoft websites. And I can spell it properly, that would help. And then I get the answer back. Okay, but this time now it's only sourced from Microsoft websites, which is very, very helpful. Right? Now, I can ask anything I want of this. Like I said, it's almost unlimited. I had to try and give myself fake scenarios just to come up with different things that I could do. Right? One of those scenarios was, what would I do if my boss asked me, John, we need to create a marketing awareness campaign around security in 365 because it's so important. Can you create a 12-week marketing campaign that we can use on social media, etc.? Right? If I was asked that question, I probably wouldn't know where to start, right? Probably get overwhelmed very quickly. With Copilot now, I can just put a prompt in here, right? That simply says, create a step-by-step guide on building a marketing awareness campaign around security in 365, how business premium can protect the customer environment, include the best way to reach your customer base and new customers, include LinkedIn options, above the line marketing, social media posts, yada, yada. And once I have a prompt here, I can then just click execute that. And within a few seconds, I now have a guideline. I have a roadmap that I can use, a step-by-step guide as I requested on how to build this marketing campaign, right? Just setting that out, like just defining my goals, right? Understanding what the security features are, the key features, right? Developing the messaging around that, right? Creating a plan, utilizing LinkedIn. It goes through lots of different things. And of course, there's other prompts here that I could utilize, like what tools could be used for KPIs, or can you provide some examples of successful campaigns? I can use all that to learn more. And let's just say, for argument's sake, the manager said, John, we need to kick this campaign off by April 1st, right? It's like, okay, that's fine. I could ask Copilot, can you create a schedule that would allow me to complete the above by April 1st. And now I've got a schedule that I can adhere to in order to do this, a daily schedule. And of course, if I detail my prompt even better, like give me a schedule in order to complete this task by April 1st, but I can only address things between 11 and 12 o'clock each day, then the schedule that it gives me will obviously reflect that. Now, there are, again, infinite things that I can ask Copilot. And one of the things I was asked, I was doing an in-person event with a customer, right? They were a shipping firm, right? And they're responsible for, I think, like the schedules of ships and coming and going and so forth, right? Insurance stuff as well. And one of the ladies at the end of that in-person event that I had done came up to me and just asked me, listen, would Copilot be able to create a Python script for me that would generate a heat map based on various units of measure, like just hot to cold heat map? And I was just sitting there like, I have no idea, like deer in headlights. That's like, I have absolutely no idea. This is not something I would have ever asked it before in my entire life. But then I said, let's try. Okay, you kind of live and die by the sword. Let's see what it can do. And I put the following prompt in, right? Can you create a Python script to create a a cold to hot, blue to red heat map based on, let's just change this, right? 300 units of measure. And we'll just say 300 units of measurement and display the heat map. I've done this where it doesn't display it for me and then I have to ask afterwards. Display the heat map and show the Python script used. Now, this might take a little bit longer than my step-by-step guide on how to build a marketing campaign because it's slightly more complex, okay? However, when I did this, I didn't know what would happen at the time. And the fact that it worked was insane for me, right? Because it just basically brought home just how creative you can get with this kind of stuff. You can fix up SQL code to make databases even better. You can create code to build websites or improve websites or make certain things more efficient, right? And here's a SQL, it's not SQL, sorry, here's a Python script that's used to create a heat map that goes from cold to hot, blue to red, and it's based on obviously just random units of measure. Now, when you put in the correct units of measure, you will have a proper heat map. And that again, it just showed me just how creative you can get with this. Now that's just the web function. If you want, you could look at the work function. And within here, you can essentially ask Copilot anything about your work, right? I can look up emails that I have today. I could look up and list all the meetings that I have. Like if I said, show me a list of all meetings today. Well, let's just say for the next 7 days. Copilot will be able to give me a list of all the meetings that I have over the next 7 days. You can't do that using an outside AI tool. And let's say one of these meetings is, for argument's sake, a training session. No, not a training session. Let's say it's a sales call that I have with a potential client. Well, I could ask Copilot to list for me all the emails I've had back and forth and summarize all the emails I've had back and forth with that client in order to prepare for that meeting. I could also ask Copilot, if I press /, I can look up any documents. So I could say, give me a business basic document here, right? This document is approximately 3 to 4 pages long, right? It's like upgrading business basic to a business premium subscription for security purposes, okay? You'll hear the word security a lot today. That's really because it's so important. But upgrading business basic to business security, 4-page document. I can ask Copilot, summarize this document in 10 bullet points. And now I can catch up, get up to speed quickly on the document with 10 quick bullet points on what's in this. And that's that 4-page document boiled down to my 10 bullet points here. Some sub bullet points as well. Really, really useful, right? And that can be like 50-page document, 100-page document. You can get summaries of it, you can get information from it, you can ask questions of it, and you can get that information back, right? So there's lots of stuff that you can do here within the work side of Copilot, and as well as the web side of Copilot, right? Within the website as well, you can generate images, which is fantastic, right? So if I wanted an image, let's say I was doing a security presentation, which I will do in a moment, and I wanted an image of a hacker, right? Something unique, something fun even. Well, I could easily just ask Copilot to create one. I could say, create an image, let's create a 3D CGI render of a hacker in a yellow. Let's go with yellow. I always go with red. Let's go with yellow hooded coat in a dark room with a single window and rain outside, and a laptop with matrix code running down the screen. And if anybody is an It fan or a Stephen King fan, we will ask for a and a paper boat on the desk, just for fun. But now I can have an image, very, very unique, very, very descriptive. And as you'll see in the presentation that I'm delivering, you can get quite fun. And of course, you can keep it as professional as you want if it's a very formal presentation or a really heavy topic that you're actually presenting on. Or you can keep it as light and unique as you want if it's just something that you're, talking about a specific topic and you want something in the background as a holder. And then there we have, right? This is a quick image of our yellow hooded guy with the window, matrix code running down, and he's got a little paper boat on his desk. Perfect. You can take that image then and utilize it in your presentation. Now, if I jump into Word, right, and we open up a blank Word document, this is where AI can, or Copilot can differentiate itself again from any other tools because it lives within Word, right? We see here we have this Copilot option just at the top of the screen, which has vanished from me. That has never happened in the history of me using the web-based version of this tool. Okay, it's back. So we see here our Copilot option. Now, this allows me to draft anything I want in Word, a blog post, a letter, a report, anything that I need, I can create using this prompt. Of course, I've got Copilot over here as well. Now this will enable me to basically ask anything I want of this document. So for instance, if I had a 50-page document here, I can ask any questions I want of that document. I can get a list of ideas, because this is kind of connected to the web. I can get a list of ideas. I can even ask it to create images. Instead of creating them here, where we did a minute ago, I can create them within the document and then just paste them into my file. Now, if I click on the Copilot option, let's create something. Again, I was doing an in-person event. It was in the Microsoft offices, and it was mostly for solicitors, right? And they were struggling to align kind of AI and Copilot with their own day-to-day tasks. But one of them were using Copilot, and it was great because he just came up to me in the room and he was like, here, put this prompt in. And he gave me a prompt that he was using. And I saved it because it was really good. And all it says is, I'm an Irish solicitor, draft a letter to a client who has instructed me to sell their house, outlining the details of the Irish conveyancing process and the documents they must provide me and how the process will work. Include an estimate of fees, access to internet resources, particularly the Law Society of Ireland, and then I gave it some details of who you are. And within a few seconds, you have exactly what you've asked for. You've got a letter outlining the conveyancing process, a list of all the documents they need to provide you, how the process will work, an estimation of fees, and you can, based on your prompt, tailor that to look as and how you want it to, which I think is extremely powerful. If you have an existing document or template that you like the look of, you could put the prompt in, reference the existing document, and say, use this format to create X, Y, or Z. So I can create a document basically of anything I want with the help of Copilot, even just getting me started, giving me insights, giving me ideas, blog posts, social media posts, whatever I need, I can create and draft it here. If I look at, for instance, other things that you can do outside of creating a document, right? You can compare documents with each other, which is actually unbelievably useful. I could compare a contract A with contract B and ask Copilot, is all the clauses in contract A included in contract B? And if it's not, list for me the ones that are missing. As opposed to me having to read a 200-page document to try and see which clauses are missing and which clauses are different even, right? Because you may have a clause in there that's the same, but it's worded differently. So you could ask Copilot, compare these two documents and show me anything within the contract clauses that's different. And it will show you that, right? You could have a tender and you could be having a response to that tender. You could ask Copilot, in my response to the tender, have I addressed all concerns? Have I answered all questions? Before you send your response to a tender back, you can actually use Copilot to make sure it's as good as possible. Right? One use case I have would be I used Copilot to create a job spec. And it was perfect, right? I didn't even have to amend it, right? I knew the job because I'd done it for like 15 years. So I just asked Copilot, create a job spec for a sales solution sales specialist, right? Or a security solution sales specialist. And Copilot did it in a matter of seconds and it was perfect. And I said, great. Now, if you do that and then you put the job spec out there, what happens? You'll get CVs back, right? People will be applying for your job, hopefully. So when you do that, instead of reading all the CVs or reading the CVs, you can actually just compare them with each other and the job spec to see which one is the best. So for instance, I've got 3 CVs, they're all me, right? One is me in school, one is me when I finished school, one is me after I was 25 and I decided to go to college or whatever, right? So you can tell which CV is which, right? Here's the first CV, right? I'm going to compare Homer Simpson with the CV Lisa Simpson and the CV, we'll go with Bart Simpson. And we're going to compare that to the job spec, which I have ingeniously named job spec, right? And now I'm going to ask it to just highlight who is the best person for the job. Rate the CVs from 1 to 10 based on the job spec and provide the information in the form of a report, right? Including a table at the end. And now I have exactly what I asked for. I've got a report showing me who's the best person for the job and why. And this is really useful, not just to save you time as a HR person. Maybe you've got a small HR department. Maybe you don't have a HR department. And it's actually just your team leaders and your managers of each department that has to hire for the headcount of those departments. This will be helpful to them because not only is it saving you time, this can also help with removing any unconscious bias or, God forbid, conscious bias, because it doesn't care about gender. It doesn't care about race. It's not, none of that stuff is within the prompt or the question at all, right? You're simply asking it to compare the CVs, which includes skills, work experience, and education, and asking who is the best person for the job. And we see here Homer, he lacks relevant qualifications, uh, mostly worked in the food industry, customer service, no mention of a degree, his experience, blah, 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 no mention of Microsoft products, 1 out of 10. I think it's a bit harsh in fairness, but okay. Lisa Simpson, she has a background that closely matches the job requirements, got a bachelor's degree, she's got 16 years experience. Okay, she's 10 out of 10 as far as this job spec is concerned, right? Now, if the job spec was for a bricklayer to build something at a construction site, Lisa would probably end up being a 1 out of 10 because she is nothing compared to that job spec. That's what's important. Bart, he's a 0 out of 10, right? The guy's still in school, doesn't have anything. And his CV highlights skateboarding. Okay, so based on the evaluations, Lisa is the best person for the job. I mean, that's fairly clear and obvious, right? You can even fix your prompt. If you think getting the report is too long, you could ask for the information to be in the form of just simple, quick bullet points, because that's easier to digest. And now you have a comparison of your document, of your CVs, and you just have a quick list of bullet points, 1 pager, job done. Very, very useful. And another thing you can do is you can simply create documents based on other documents, but with slight changes, right? And there's loads of use cases for that. And hopefully you can think of someone in your organization. But for argument's sake, I have a document that I just did because I was bored one day, right? So if I took, let's say, create this document, right? And it's just a document on Superman here, and change all references to Superman, Cal, and Clark to John, keeping everything else the exact same. I'll get a new document, the exact same as that document, but instead of it saying everything you need to know about Superman, it's everything you need to know about John, right? And you see here, John grew up with the adopted parents of Jonathan and Martha Kent, and so on and so on, right? So it just changes the name from John, Cal, Superman to John, right? And there's loads of different use cases for that. Being able to just create it or recreate a document and have subtle changes, like change the name, change the date of birth, change the address, change these financial figures to X, Y, and Z, and then just create the exact same document, and you've got something really quick. Now, if we moved into PowerPoint and we wanted to create a presentation, let's say for argument's sake, I was asked for a presentation around security in business premium, right? And why it's so important. Well, I could click Copilot and it would let me at the bottom create a presentation from a prompt. I could ask for a presentation using a prompt. However, that's actually not that powerful, right? It's not really that good because it's going to pull from anywhere and everywhere, right? Even the web. You're not sure about the information. You have to double check everything. It also puts images in every single slide, which is a real pain because you then can't use the smart art that you may want to, right? Unless you remove the images, which is just work you don't need to do. However, where it's really powerful is creating a presentation from an existing file that you have, from an existing Word document. So I could create a presentation from an existing document around business premium and security. But if I want the presentation to read in flow in a specific way, all I need to do is create the document. If I don't already have it, I can just create it. So what I'll do is, it is 6 minutes past 11. I'm going to create that document now very, very quickly. Okay, so I'm going to create a blank document here, and I'm simply going to put in a prompt, and this will basically say, create a report around security and business premium plans. Emphasize the importance of data protection and compliance for small to medium-sized businesses, right? And this will be used for a presentation, right? And then I can basically put in the headings I want to use, right? Give me an introduction to Microsoft Business Premium, an overview of the security features. And you see here, it's already asking me to put in more things, right? Benefits of data protection, security compliance. I could also say benefits of mobile device management for hybrid workers, right? Case studies and best practices. Let's just remove that. The financial cost of a security breach for SMBs in Ireland. I could say I want information on brand damage that can happen from a security breach, right? Even just leaving it at that. And then, of course, I have my conclusion. And I can set this off. So I'm dictating. I want a report about this information. I want it in this order because this is the order in which I'm going to discuss things within my presentation. So I'm dictating all of that. And within a few seconds, I have a document outlining specifically what I want to talk about in my presentation. That's all I need. And it takes no longer than 10, 20 seconds for that to be created. Right? Now, of course, again, AI generated content may be incorrect. I need to read through this. Right? Now, I know the topic quite well, so I can read through that really quickly and say, yep, that's all great. I love all that. Actually, this, you know what? I'm going to highlight this. I want this information to be displayed to me in the form of a table. I think that will look better as a table. Right, there we go. Job done. I'm going to keep that, and I'll delete this. I don't need that anymore. And then I could say, you know what, this conclusion. In conclusion, Business Premium offers a powerful suite, and it's like, oh, jeez, that's really kind of wordy. I'm going to highlight that, and I'm just going to ask Copilot to rewrite this as a more casual tone, right? Maybe in a more casual tone is probably a better way to word that. And I'll get a new paragraph. To wrap things up, Microsoft Business Premium gives small to medium-sized businesses a great set of tools to boost productivity and keep data safe. That's much better. Okay, it reads a lot better. Keep that. Get rid of this. Right, and then you can be happy with it. You know, oh, I'm going to take my picture here and copy this, and I'm just going to put this in my document as well. Okay, probably be huge. I need to resize it. Right, which will take all of 2 seconds. And now that's in my document, right? I like that. And I can add any images I want to this document for them to be in my presentation if I want. And once I have that document, all I'm going to do is copy the link, right? I'm going to go into my presentation and simply create a presentation from a file. Now I can pick and find a file if I need to, but I'm just going to paste in the link and click create. And now, and the reason this is taking, I think I started at maybe 6 minutes past. The reason it's taking 4 minutes so far is because I have to speak through everything. But of course, I could create this relatively quickly if I was just doing it. See here, the slides, all being generated. There's the order in which everything is going to be discussed because I designed the document that way. And before you know it, I've got 10 slide deck here that I can go through covering everything about business premium. Now, this is a very bland looking deck. However, what's really perfect, what's really important is that the information in it is perfect. The information in it is what's in my document. Now I can simply go into design very quickly, use a template that my company has saved with my color palette, font and brand logos, etc. Let's just pick this one. Let's just go with a green. And then I can just use Designer to make these slides look the way I want them to look. I have an agenda here. I can use the smart art options that make it look a lot better. Let's go with that. And then I have a introduction to Microsoft Business Premium. This has an image in it, and as you can see, I don't get any smart art options because of the image. So I'm actually just going to remove that. Right, Designer will break down as you can see, but if I just take away this box, it'll kick back in. And now I have actual options there. Right, I'll go through this relatively quickly, just pushing in the various different slides and make them look the way I want. Again, I don't like that image. I'm going to just remove that. But what I'll do is I'm going to select this, but I'm going to go into my image library that I have. And what I'll do for my image library is just pick something maybe that is more appropriate for that particular slide, right? So this one, compliance, that works well. I can put that in here, and I think that looks good. And that's why it's good to have an image library. Here's my my table that was in my document. And of course, I'll just place that here. And then the last couple of slides, I'll just use what's here. Here is my Pennywise victim for a hacker who's sitting here. I'm going to use that. And then we'll finish with a conclusion. I'll take away the image. Again, I don't think it looks too great. And I'll just use the options now that are available to me. And I'll go with that conclusion. Job done. That took 7 minutes. In 7 minutes, I have a presentation that would normally take an hour, maybe two, to figure out, okay, business premium, what am I going to put in this? Where do I start? How do I write it? Have to go into the smart art. I need to create the smart art from scratch. I need to build all the bullet points. It's time consuming even when you know what you're talking about. Being able to build the document this is derived from within 20 seconds, and then being able to build this from that really quickly is extremely helpful. Now, I'm not just going to leave it at that. I can play with it a bit more, but most importantly, I can spend the next hour practicing this presentation, learning the flow of it, so that when I deliver this to the potential new client, or if it's a training session for a new starter in my organization, it's going to be received much better because I'll have had time to actually go through it instead of spending so much time making it in the first place. Now, hopefully you can see how useful that can be for anybody who requires to use PowerPoint for any reasons. But if we jump into the more financial aspects of things again, and we have an Excel and we look at a whole data set here of information, right? You can see there's a Copilot option on the right-hand side, much like all the other applications. And this data set is a few thousand lines of various different vehicles that are sold to different companies all around the world. I can ask Copilot to give me insights and information from this data set. This data in itself is not very helpful, right? There's too much of it. But if I wanted to know who my top 10 customers were, I could just ask Copilot, right? Show me my top 10 customers by sales by country. And Copilot will be able to now go through the data set itself, and it should be able to list out all the top 10 customers that are there, the sales that they have, and what country they're in. And it will allow me to add that as a new sheet with a pivot table. You see here it's creating the information, and I should be able to, in a moment, add this as a new sheet. And when I click add, there's my top 10 customers by what country they're in and the sales they have, all derived from the data within, I want to say that was done within maybe 25 seconds. Whereas if I had to go and create a pivot table of all of this, I would be, God knows how long I'd be end up playing with that. And I know how to use Excel, and I'd still be messing around with it for God knows how long. If I wanted to know, like, even just show me my top 5 uh, countries by sales performance, um, by sales performance, and create a pie chart, bar chart. Copilot will be able to go through it, show me who my top 5 countries are that I sell to, and it will create a bar chart as a visual representation of that data, right? So you can see USA is obviously way above the rest, right? And I can add that as a new sheet. Again, it gives me a new sheet with that information in a pivot table and my visual representation of that I can copy and paste into a presentation or a document that I want to deliver. I could also ask Copilot, what are my 5 worst countries that I perform in? And then I can make decisions based on those insights. Do I remove resources from those worst countries and put them somewhere else because they're not making any money? Or do I take resources from my best performing countries and put them into my worst performing countries in order to bolster them up? I can make decisions now. And other than getting insights to anything I want, like show me the top 5 selling product line and create a pie chart. And this is always interesting because I think vintage cars ends up being the top, or classic cars ends up being like the top seller amongst this data set. You see here, there's my pie chart. One of them is obviously selling way more than the rest. And then there's the information done. It's classic cars, vintage cars, motorcycles. Okay, buses and trucks not doing too bad either, right? So you have all that information at your fingertips relatively quickly. But not only can I get any insights I want from a data set like this in Excel, I can manipulate the data, right? If I have like this column D here for sales, very hard to see what's what. If I want to, I could just ask Copilot, format um, format the column D to show all sales over 3,000 in a blue cell, and all sales under 3,000 in a red cell. Copilot should be able to create the conditional format required to achieve this, as you can see here, and then allow me to apply it to the data set. So now very quickly, and I can easily now see what's good and what's bad based on that, random context. Right? Not only can you create additional formats, I could change these dollar signs to euro signs. I could add 2 decimal places or remove 2 decimal places, right? I could maybe try to find out what is the euro amount of all my sales, right? So I could ask Copilot, create a column that shows sales times 1.04, which would be the dollar to euro exchange rate, and present the values with a euro symbol. And that actually should really be enough, right? So what it should do now is it should take my sales, multiply those figures by the exchange rate that I happen to know is 1.04 for dollar to euro, unless it's changed in the last few days, creates a column. More importantly, when I insert that column, which will show up at the end of my file because I didn't specify where to put it, it's in the euro symbol that I asked for. And now I have a euro version or value for all my sales, right? Really quick and easy instead of me having to try and do that. And you can do it with formula as well. Like here I have the word if, right? For if statement. Let's say you wanted to create an if statement and you weren't sure how to do it. Well, I could just ask Copilot, create an if statement to show the word rubbish when sales is under 3,000 and promotion when sales is over 3,000. And Copilot should be able to go about creating an if statement for that. Now, I used to work in reporting for a company, a multinational company years ago. And I remember going through bonus structures for employees that had they reached certain thresholds. I had if statements that were like paragraphs long. Absolute massive headache. We see here, it's allowing me to insert it as a column, or I can simply copy the formula and just paste it in here. And it's like, boom, promotion, promotion, rubbish, 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 right? So you can use that in any way you want. And you can get really, really complex with your formulas. If you have a formula that's broken for some reason, you don't know why, you can ask Copilot, just copy and paste your formula in here and ask Copilot, why is this not working? And not only will it tell you why it's not working, it will fix it for you. Then you can copy and paste the fixed version in. So loads of different use cases that you can use this within Excel. Hopefully you're able to see some of them. Now, lastly, what I want to try and do is I just want to try and jump into Teams. I have a Teams call running at the moment that's recording essentially every single thing I'm saying, right? So this is like a Teams meeting that we're all in, right? The transcript is running, right? You may be recording it as well. Well, this is not that useful. I mean, look how many words I've said. I mean, Jesus, I can talk, right? Look at all of this. My God, absolutely useless. I mean, it's great. You have minutes. You don't need someone to take the minutes. That's fantastic. But I mean, that is just way too much, too many words to gain any use of. With Copilot, I can ask anything I want of this meeting. I could say to it, summarize everything John said about Excel. And now I have a summary of everything that I mentioned about Excel, right? That is extremely powerful. This could be a meeting that you're in. It could be a meeting that you attended a week ago. But you can get information from any meeting. If you've got and I used to have it in a sales job I used to have, where we'd have a Monday morning meeting every Monday, going through what big deals you're working on this week, how are you performing against target, what issues are you coming up against, what kind of complaints have you had. We have a lot of back and forth within the meetings, like a proper meeting, not just me talking at you, but an actual meeting. And there are tasks handed out and actions handed out. And if I was giving you all tasks at the moment or giving you all actions, I could click list action items and it would show them. I could go in on a Friday and list the action items from last Monday's meeting to make sure that they're done before I go into this Monday morning's meeting and look like I haven't done anything, right? So I can get anything I want. And not only can you get any information, you see here as well, I can recap the meeting so far. So if I'm 10 or 15 minutes late to a meeting, I can simply recap it really quickly. You can list the different perspectives by topic. So if I've had 2 or 3 meetings with a potential client where I'm talking to managing directors, chief financial officers, chief operations officers, right, all of whom have different priorities on what they think is important to an organization, I can find out, well, what did they all agree on? What did they disagree on? What did they all really love about my solution? What did they not like? And then I can actually use that and build a SWOT analysis so that when I do a final pitch meeting, I know what I want to emphasize to them because I know what they've all loved, and I know what I want to maybe, I'm not going to sweep it under the carpet, but I'm definitely not going to bring it forward, right? That is unbelievably useful to a person in a sales position. And if you've got a multinational organization or you've got a multilingual organization, let's say for argument's sake, I'm Spanish, right? And I work for your organization, right? Clearly I can speak English, that's fine. But if I'm Spanish and Spanish is my first language, well, maybe when I catch up on a meeting and I say, for argument's sake, generate meeting notes in Spanish. At least now, when I'm trying to catch up on a meeting that maybe I was late to, or maybe I couldn't make it because I was sick, or maybe I was on a call with a customer and I couldn't make your meeting, I can get the information that I want from that meeting in whatever language I want. And that again can be really helpful to get me up to speed quickly. Of course, I can speak English, that's no problem. But speaking my first language is, or using my first language is obviously going to help me more, right? So there's loads of different things. It's actually really, really powerful when utilizing it within Teams and Teams meetings. Again, something other iterations like Gemini or ChatGPT or anything that lives outside your environment just simply cannot do. Now, if we jump back in as well, I want to just go through very quickly with you agents, right? Copilot agents are really useful. You see here, you can create an agent using your watered down version of Copilot Studio by simply accessing it And it's actually very easy. In fact, I'll jump back out and show you just how easy it is. This is your Copilot Studio that your Copilot for 365 license gives you. I created a couple of agents, right? It's very simple. You click create, then you click on new agent, and then what you do is you simply give it a name, right? I'll call this agent webinar. You give it a description, that can be anything, it doesn't really matter, right? You give it an icon, 30 pixels by 30, relatively small. Here's what's important. You give it an instruction, right? What do you want this agent to do for you? How do you want it to display the information or whatever it is that it's doing for you? And then the last thing you do is you point it at a knowledge base. That can be a website, that can be a SharePoint site, it can be a library of information, or it can be a single document. And again, we go back to how do you achieve success and avoid failure? You start simple and you grow complexity. I have my two agents here. Sorry, they're hiding here. I'll go back a screen. I have my agents here, right? If I go into agents, this private cache agent, well, this agent is simply pointing at a single Excel file with all pricing on it. And because our pricing has different commitment terms, monthly commitments, annual commitments, and then it's got different pricing terms like monthly billing, annual billing when it's annual commitment, and monthly billing when it's annual commitment, and so on. I simply give it an instruction. Access the price file. Always return the cost price and the recommended retail price in any term commitments and billing cycles for all products and segments or the specific ones asked for, and always provide the answer in the form of, and then that's it. So now instead of me getting like trying to find 5 or 10 different products and what the pricing is for each of them, I can just ask Copilot, give me the pricing on these 10 products. And I get all the pricing I need straight away for them from my agent. Really, really simple use case. And I'm sure you can come up with many, many more of your own. And you can then grow complexity. We have a customer who was creating an agent who would answer questions for their customers on their website and then would send the customer links to their bookings page so they could book various different things. I can't remember what it was, maybe a hotel thing. And we also have a customer who was using agents to actually generate tenders. And his agents were so complex that they were generating tenders. These They would say it would normally take 2 days to create the tender. They were able to generate a tender within 2 hours using their agent and then, of course, doing some work themselves afterwards, right? Massive time savings with regards to that, right? So hopefully you can see as well just how useful it can be getting a Copilot for 365 license, but having a license to use agents. And just there at the bottom, you can see you can also publish your agent. So when you publish your agent, it actually can appear in your teams as an app, and other employees that you have can use that agent if they need to. So that brings me towards the end, guys, where we would just recommend that if you are looking to launch AI and Copilot into your organization, this is what you do. You identify your Copilot champions. Who will use this? Who will adapt to it quickly? Who will try and break it, right? Just to achieve what they can. You then buy one, maybe two licenses for each of your departments, right? Two so that people can learn from each other, but at least one for each department, right? Because how marketing can use it and how HR can use it and how finance can use it is obviously completely different from one another. So once you identify the champions within each department, you give them a Copilot license. You roll out the free Copilot chat to all of your users so that they can all kind of get used to that in the meantime. Get a security review done from DNA IT who can help you with looking at your data and the security and making sure everything is as it should be. And I know Jason will run through now a lot of things around compliance. And then what you do is you do that structure we mentioned very early on in this presentation. You create that weekly catch up with your Copilot champions. Bring them together so they can talk to each other. Where did this work really well? Where were you able to use it? How did you create that report? How did you do this? Where did it help you save time and become more productive? And then obviously, where did it not? And that way then you can make what I mentioned earlier, that educated, informed decision on how best to roll out AI across your organization. And that brings us to the end. I'd normally do a little Q&A, but I know that there is a message box or a chat box at the end, and I'm not sure if Adrian wants to address all the kind of questions after the session or not. I'll leave that with yourselves. But that brings me to the end of my presentation, guys.
John, that's fantastic. Thanks very much. Absolutely brilliant. We do have some questions. We have some fantastic questions actually come through. Thanks a million for that, guys. We'll just have a very quick look through Jason's work now. We're going to just hand you over to Jason, like I said at the outset, and he's going to talk about how Microsoft Business Premium can be really utilized as a way of accelerating NIS2 cybersecurity compliance. This is a very short presentation. It's going to take 15-20 minutes thereabouts, just to apply a bit of sense to this. And then we'll talk about the questions at the end. Keep them coming in, guys. We've got some fantastic questions, really good things to discuss in a minute. But over to you, Jason. Can't hear you, Jason. You muted or?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
All right,
Thanks,
grand.
Jason. Go ahead.
Yeah, just give me a split sec. Just need to make sure I'm sharing the right things with everyone here. Okay, can everyone see that? Adrian, can you see that?
Yeah, Jason, that's perfect. Yeah, we'll go ahead. Looks great.
Yeah. All right,
Yeah,
perfect.
all good.
Yeah, so today we're going to be looking at essentially two frameworks. The very first is going to be the National Institute. Give me a sec. I'm having trouble with the technology here. Okay, there we go. Right, so the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, it's been around since 1901. This current draft of the Zero Trust architecture came out in 2024. We'll be going through what it means and how that provides us guidance in achieving this Zero Trust. They worked in conjunction with 24 vendors, including businesses like Broadcom, Forescout, Google Cloud, IBM, and Microsoft. Essentially, the three key tenets of Zero Trust are never trust, always verify. And this really means that we need to ensure that any individual or identity or device is authenticated before we let it into our network. And we want to ensure that principle of least privilege is employed. That means that we apply role-based access controls to ensure that users get access to the data and the tools that they need to perform their function without getting access to things that they shouldn't. We're trying to minimize risk through segmentation throughout the business. And then the last is to assume breach. And that means that we're having to continually monitor and ensure compliance of individuals and devices, even once they have access to corporate infrastructure or corporate data. Having a framework like this provides us to layer security. We're getting the opportunity to consider the identity as the new perimeter in this new modern way of work. Traditionally, we would have a site, a building with a firewall attached to it, similar to a notion of having a castle with a moat. Once you're inside those impenetrable walls, you're pretty much left alone to do what you need to do. The issue there is that once a bad actor has access to that network, uh, traditionally they would have had access to the crown jewels. This new modern way of work ensures that this layered approach gives us opportunity to manage the identity through things like multi-factor authentication and conditional access policies to ensure that people are who they say they are, whether that be an individual or an API, doesn't matter. We get the opportunity to manage the endpoint, so no unrecognized or unmanaged device gets access to corporate data or infrastructure. The applications themselves can only be accessed from approved devices and approved identities. The network itself is secured using granular access controls and things like VPNs. Infrastructure through segmentation, continuous verification, and once again through least privilege. Then getting down to data, ensuring that that absolute crucial part of any business is protected through sufficient governance and through data loss protection. We get access to modern technologies like tagging and auditing to monitor that. NIS2 is NIS2 was brought about initially in 2023, the second version. The first version was back in 2020. It wasn't brought into force in 24. There were delays. We do anticipate that that will happen this year. So we effectively running out a bit of time there. We've only got about 8 months left to ensure that we are ticking all the right boxes. Every company will need to assess their applicability. Here are a list of the sectors that will be impacted under the high criticality regime. So here we see energy, transport, public administration, all the way through to ICT services management. And even if you don't fall into this high criticality sector, you may fall under these other critical sectors too. So it's really, really important that we self-identify correctly to make sure that we are putting in place the correct steps. Typically, businesses with 50 or more staff, 10 million in revenue, and crucially, any company supplying or supporting any eligible entity. So within that supply chain, if we are in that position, these NIS2 regulations would apply to us. Important to note, where certifications like ISO 27001 are in place, some of these requirements may be satisfied. We're going to go through a few of the organizational requirements now, just to make sure that we are putting those correct steps in place. We need to ensure that our incident management, supply chain security, our network security, and access controls are in place. Crucially, encryption, so data encrypted both in transit and at rest, your communications encrypted, and the rest. We need to make sure that we are reporting accurately on any incidents. We need to have these processes and plans in place. Also really, really important is the fact that corporate accountability is going to be brought in. There are fines and penalties for non-compliance. This is quite new, and I think it's got a lot of people in the industry a little bit nervous. But we'll show you today that where the tooling and technology comes into it, we can certainly help you prepare to get that baseline. Business continuity, as always, crucial to ensure that those service delivery pieces to our business are available. And we will cover the following 12 areas just to demonstrate how tools like Microsoft's Business Premium can be used to achieve this compliance. From a governance perspective, leveraging Entra ID for the identity, Microsoft Purview for the data loss prevention portion, and Compliance Manager to keep an eye over all of our assets to ensure that each of them is compliant before providing access to any critical data or infrastructure. Using tools like Defender for Business and Defender for Office to ensure that we're managing both the endpoint and tools like the identity or exchange. For when we don't have things where we expect to find them, asset management is going to be key. Intune and Entra provide that detailed list of what we have on our books, what we are managing, and ensuring that we're managing those things accurately and correctly, always keeping them compliant. Looking into the supply chain, making sure that um, any connection with any partner is secure. Tools like the business-to-business connector being in place to allow that secure transfer of data between ourselves and our trusted partners. With identity and access, as I mentioned earlier, with identity being the new perimeter, leveraging things like Entra ID to manage the person's credentials, manage multi-factor authentication and conditional access, and then that Defender for Office 365 to help protect any of our collaboration tools and traditional email systems like Exchange in the cloud. Where it comes to data security, there are a large range of tools that provide that functionality within the suite, where we have Defender for Office, Purview, as I mentioned before. You'll notice that there's a little bit of repetition and overlap between each of these things. That is by design. System security, looking at that endpoint, whether it be an individual's devices or an IoT device, those can be protected. And then assuring network resilience through both design and the way applications are exposed to our users. Proactive monitoring, making sure that we can see exactly what's happening within the estate, both from an identity and a device perspective, being able to set policies, be able to set alerts, and be able to visualize these through tools like Microsoft Sentinel. Incident monitoring, once again, having those alerts come down to a ticket desk for action, or in other cases, to have alerts firing off into an automated system for reaction as they occur. Defender for Business, with its automated investigations, provides us that proactive security layer that is going to be crucial to staying compliant within NIS2, and then being able to manage our responses and recoveries. NIST here provides us some guideline, again, identify, protect, detect, respond, and then recover. As I mentioned before, we're looking at this from a Microsoft Business Premium perspective, how each of these tooling requirements can be satisfied. These tie in really neatly, leveraging the suite of products available within Business Premium. That way you're assured of a well-architected zero trust solution. In terms of preparation for compliance, make sure that you're self-identifying correctly. Make sure that which parts of your business fall under scope. Evaluate your security measures in place and incorporate any new measures required. DNA is very well positioned to assist you in achieving this compliance. And thanks, Adrian. Any questions?
Right, brilliant. Thanks very much, Jason. Sorry, lads, I'm just fumbling with the mute off function there. So now we do have some questions, guys. Some really good questions, actually. So let me just call them out here. So this one is from one of our listeners here who's just asked a really good question. Can you have a, from Sebastian, thank you very much, Sebastian. Can you have a transcript running in Teams while you have unrelated GoToMeeting session? So I think that one would be for both you guys. Which one would you like to take that?
Um, I can take that in regards to running a
This is
transcript in a
regarding
team.
Copilot, yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly what I had actually done, right? This is actually my first time using GoToWebinar. Normally, when I do a webinar, I do the webinar in Teams. and then I've got a transcript that I can use in order to demonstrate the Teams function of Copilot itself. So because I didn't have that with Go to Assist, I just ran a Teams meeting in the background and I had it recording the transcript. And that was how I was able to demo how you can use Copilot in Teams. So I used that exact scenario you mentioned there.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks very much, John. Hope that answers the question, Sebastian. Let us know in the chat there if you have anything else you'd like to elaborate on. We have another question here from another member and says, can Copilot assist with real-time threat detection? And as a follow-on to that, how does it integrate with Microsoft security tools like Defender or Sentinel?
With something like that, we'd need to maybe take a question like that aside. There is a solution, Copilot for security, that would probably something you need to look at with regards to something as complex as that. The Copilot for 365 just simply inherits security controls that are in place already within the 365 environment, especially with regards to documentation, sensitivity labels, and data that people have and have not got access to. Um, Using Copilot to actually secure an environment with things like Defender for 365 or Defender for Endpoint or Entra ID for conditional access and so on, that's probably something that exists within what essentially is a different solution, which is Copilot for security. And if somebody has a requirement or needs maybe more information specifically relating to that, we can try and look it up and send it on at a later time.
Okay, thanks, John. Fair enough. Yeah, we've got another question here. How does Copilot integrate with Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager?
Uh, so Purview Compliance is just a security aspect of the Microsoft 365 E5 subscription or the E5 security and E5 compliance add-on, whichever kind of license they have, that Purview aspect. It it doesn't in regards to Copilot for 365 that I demonstrated. It's more of a productivity tool that helps you with your day-to-day tasks, not so much the security aspects of your environment itself. Like I mentioned there to the previous question, it's used or inherits the security controls and policies you have in place. It's not used to create security controls and policies. That may be Copilot for security that you would need to look at for such a thing.
Okay, very good. Thanks, John. I don't think there'll be any other questions. That was the three we got from the panel or from the guests this morning. No, that's it. Okay, anyone has any other questions, sure, take it offline with us and we can chat about it at a later stage. I hope everyone enjoyed the session this morning. Thank you very much for your time, guys, and attention. And sure, like that, if you have any further questions, please do get in touch with us here and we'll take it further again. Thanks, John. Thanks again, Jason, for your time and excellent presentations. Okay, we'll
Thank
wrap
you.
it there, guys.
Brilliant.
Thanks
Thanks,
very much.
everyone.
Cheers. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Bye.